and then doing music. So how did you get the opportunity to say hey, I've got some songs to sing?
Well, I've always been a huge fan of music. When I was growing up, I was always a big fan of the classics, Beatles, Beach Boys, Led Zeppelin, Queen, all that. And those were really those Bob Dylan, all that. They were songwriters. When I started playing guitar, I was probably 12 years old, I guess. Because I did a movie with Roger Daltrey where I had to learn to play guitar for the movie, and I just fell in love with it. And so I wanted to become, some shredding Angus Young, Brian Setzer guitar player. And so I'd sit in my room and I'd play and I'd play and I'd play. And then I started hearing the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Bob Dylan, all that, all these songwriters, and I kind of wanted to do that more than become some shredding, amazing guitar player. So I started concentrating more on writing songs and playing, doing my own thing and putting bands together and all that, and it kind of progressed. And I don't know. I think just the music I grew up on, they were all songwriters and all, So I kind of just gravitated towards that.
Okay, cool. So I talked to Miranda Cosgrove during her music tour, and you guys are both co-stars on Drake and Josh shows, plus working together since then. And you guys are, what's really cool is you guys are both really grounded people. So how do you keep your groundedness?
Heavy shoes. Keeps me down. No, I don't know. It just, I've been doing this forever. Same with Miranda. I think when you get into it when you're really young and you kind of grow up in it, you don't, it's more like you care about the craft and you care about the work, and it's not as much like, if I arrived, into LA when I'm 17 years old and I all of a sudden book some big thing, and then it kind of goes to your head a little bit, because you get a little too much at once, you know what I'm saying? And so I think for Miranda and I, Miranda started, I remember when we started Drake and Josh, she was, I think when we did the pilot, she was 7 years old. She was a baby, so I think just growing up in it and seeing, what, and also when you grow up in it, you can see the good and the bad. You can see what happens if you go down this path. You can see what happens if you go down this path. If you go down this path, you're going to be successful. You might, you could end up doing this and this and this, or you could end up with an ankle bracelet. So you kind of you kind of get to see that when you grow up in it. You're surrounded by it all the time. I think that's really what has kept us grounded.
Yes. Okay. Good. So you actually directed some of Drake and Josh shows, which a lot of kids don't know that you have a little bit of directing experience. What did you learn from directing, and did you like it?
I loved directing, and I love to direct. It's one of my favorite things. Really, when I work on a movie or I work on a television show, I'm not just the actor that shows up and does his lines and does what he needs to do and leaves. I'm over at Video Village, watching the monitor and suggesting things and critiquing things and changing things, and I love to be a part of the entire process. Even when it comes to the post-production and all that, I love every aspect of it. So when I got to direct, it was really, really cool. Just really, really great for me to be able to do that, and because I'm a creative person, I'm a songwriter. I have so many different outlets that when you're directing, you really get to be, a creative force in what's coming out on the screen, and that's really, really, it's really fun to me.
Okay, I think I would like to do that too.
It's really, really cool. It's really cool, and especially doing something like Drake and Josh, to be able to go and direct that, something we're so familiar with. It wasn't even a challenge. It was sort of just you get to go play. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, a lot of kids think that kid performers have a pretty easy time, but did you have any obstacles that you had to overcome to succeed, and how did you deal with them?
Well, yeah, you think about how many people are trying to do the same exact thing you're doing, and how many succeeded, and there's a lot of obstacles. There's just the job in itself is a tough job. If you really think about it, everybody looks at it and they go, oh, why, she's got it so easy. She gets, but you don't even think about the 13-hour plane ride it took that artist to get to Japan, and the interviews and the things they have to do before the concert, and then the things they have to do after the concert, and then they have to get right back on it's a job. It's a grueling job. So there's definitely, but then when you get there, you're playing to amazing fans, and there's definitely, you take the good and you take the bad. There's, as far as obstacles growing up in my career, I think just it's this is one of the hardest businesses to be in, and everyone wants to do it. Everyone's trying to do it. You have to audition and audition and audition, and I've been doing it since I was 5 years old, and there's been so many auditions where you just go on and you don't get it, and you don't even call you back, and and that's probably, I would say, the biggest obstacle is the like negative reaction that you get from going into like the rejection. I think is the hardest thing. Is in this business, you're being rejected more than you're being accepted, and you walk into a room that you've worked so hard on this part, and you got it, and you've devoted so much time to it, and then you get in there and they're like, you do it, and they go, okay, thank you, goodbye. Yeah. And you're like, hey, this part has consumed my life for the past week and a half, and you give me a thank you, goodbye. I think that's sort of one of the biggest obstacles, because it's like they say, you fall off a horse, you got to get back on. You fall off a bike, you get back on. It's the same thing. You have some casting director say thank you, goodbye, and then you go home and you're like, why am I doing this? I'm working so hard and I'm not getting, but then something happens where you go in and you're right for the part. And usually it's because you're going in to be a part of a family, and the dad and the mom are blonde, so that's why you didn't get the part. You didn't get the part because you had freckles and the parents don't have freckles, or something. There's something in, you always think it's like, oh, I did such a bad performance, but there's such tiny little things of why you don't get it. So you kind of like, when it starts happening, you get one thing, you don't get 10 things. You get one thing, you don't get 20 things. It's just like, but when you get that one thing and you get on to set and you're doing what you love, it's all worth it. You kind of just forget about all the rejection, But that's the hardest thing in this business is just people going, no thanks, I'm not into it. Next.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. So, your concerts are full of energy. Like, what's probably your favorite song?
I really love to play "Fool the World." That's a really, really fun one to play. I know. I love the opening of that song when we play with the band and the horns and the guitar. There's a lot of really cool songs that I love to play just because I have such a band. The band that I play with are such talented musicians, and they're such great guys that really just everything we play is so much fun and full of energy. And I couldn't really pick out, I guess, "Fool the World" just because I love the way that song is crafted, and when it's played live, it's really impressive.
That's cool. So, I loved the Fairy Odd Parents, and I remember talking to Chris Kirkpatrick, who played one of the characters on the show, which is Chip Skylark.
Yep.
And like you were starring in the movie, can you tell us a little about the movie and everything?
Well, the movie, it's really fun. It takes place in the future where TImmie is now 23 years old. In the TV show, he's a 10-year-old little boy with fairy godparents. And he is now 23 years old, but if you grow up, you lose your fairy godparents. And if you fall in love, you lose your fairy godparents. So he's done everything in his power to stay in the 5th grade, made sure the fairies kept him in the 5th grade, make sure he still rides his bike to school, he doesn't have his driver's license, he still lives at home, he still, lives in the same bedroom, wakes up at the same, so it's sort of him trying to stay young and use, because he doesn't want to lose his fairies, who would want to lose fairies grounding in wishes every day? And now, I don't know if you're familiar with the show, but there was a character named Tootie, who was, she had the big cat-eye glasses and the braces, and she was in love with TImmie. Yeah. And TImmie was just, couldn't stand it, Well, Tootie is now 22 years old and a beautiful woman, and TImmie sort of becomes smitten with her. She comes back into town to act as an activist to save this tree in our favorite park that we grew up in that they're going to tear down. And she's like, no, we grew up with this tree. We used to climb it when we were kids, and we're not cutting it down. And then she says, oh, what's your name, little girl? And she's like, I'm Tootie, and TImmie's like, that's Tootie? And then he starts to kind of get eyes for and kind of fall in love, and then the fairy godparents are, Cosmo and Wanda are like, oh no, his love meter's going up, he can't fall in love, he'll lose us forever. And so it's sort of Timmie battling, coming of age and becoming an adult and everything. It's a really, really sweet story.
Nice, okay. So what are your plans and events?
I'm sorry?
Like, what are your upcoming plans?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm about to go on tour. We're going to do today's show tomorrow. We're going to do Good Day New York. I have a show at the Gramercy on Thursday. And then on the 13th, we have our first show in Mexico. We're going to do our Latin American tour. I play the 4th of July at the Rose Bowl in LA, which will be a lot of fun, in Pasadena. And so that's the 4th of July. And then we leave for the Latin American tour, and then we'll see from there. I'm developing a new show with Nickelodeon, which will be really cool. I just finished doing a movie up in Canada called Rags, which was with Kiki Palmer, another Nickelodeon project. But yeah, a lot of stuff with Nick right now, and a lot of music. My EP comes out tomorrow. I just released my single last week. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for talking to me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.